Victoria Hayes stood in the sterile hospital corridor, her hands trembling as she held the medical bill. The numbers blurred through her tears. $200,000 for her mother's cancer treatment. $200,000 she did not have. At 23, Victoria had always been the responsible one. After her father left when she was 16, she'd worked 2 jobs while finishing high school, then scholarships and student loans to get through college. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. Watching her mother grow weaker while the bills piled higher, Miss Hayes, Dr. Rodriguez approached with gentle eyes. "We need to discuss payment options." Victoria wiped her cheeks quickly. "How long do we have?" "Without treatment, maybe 6 months. With it, she could have years. 6 months. The words hit her like a physical blow. She nodded numbly and walked outside into the San Francisco fog, her phone buzzing with yet another rejection from the bank. That evening, she sat in her tiny apartment near Berkeley, staring at her laptop screen. Job listings, loan applications, fundraising websites. Nothing would generate enough money fast enough. She was about to close the computer when a strange advertisement caught her eye. Discreet marriage arrangement. 1-year commitment. Significant compensation for the right candidate. Her finger hovered over the link. It sounded too bizarre to be real, but desperation made her click. The website was elegant and simple. No photos, just text explaining that a successful businessman needed a temporary wife for family obligations. The compensation listed made her heart race. $300,000? Before she could talk herself out of it, Victoria filled out the application. Within an hour, her phone rang. "Miss Hayes. This is Thomas Chen, representing my employer. Can you meet tomorrow at 2 p.m.? The address led her to a gleaming skyscraper in downtown San Francisco. The elevator climbed 40 floors to an office that looked more like a luxury hotel lobby. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the entire Bay Area. "Mr. Mitchell, we'll see you now." Thomas gestured toward massive oak doors. Victoria smoothed her simple black dress and walked inside. Behind an enormous desk sat a man who made her breath catch. James Mitchell was younger than she expected, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair and intense green eyes. He wore an expensive suit, like it was part of his skin. Everything about him radiated power and control. "Please sit." His voice was deep, commanding. "Thomas has reviewed your application. You understand this is a business arrangement?" Victoria perched on the edge of the leather chair. "I understand you need a wife. For 1 year. My grandfather's will requires marriage before I inherit full control of Mitchell Technologies. The board is pressuring me to marry someone from their approved social circle. I refuse. Why me?" James leaned back, studying her. "You're educated, presentable, and most importantly, you need money badly enough to honor the contract without developing unrealistic expectations." His bluntness stung. But Victoria forced herself to focus. "What exactly would I have to do?" "Attend family events, some business functions. Live in my house to maintain the illusion. In public, you'll be the devoted wife. In private, we maintain complete distance. And the money? Half up front, half when the year ends. Plus all living expenses covered." Victoria's mind raced. $150,000 immediately would cover her mother's first surgery. "What's to stop you from backing out halfway through?" James slid a thick contract across the desk. "Legal protections for both parties. Thomas can explain the details." That night, Victoria sat by her mother's hospital bed, holding her thin hand. Linda Hayes had always been beautiful, but chemotherapy had stolen her vibrant red hair and bright smile. "Baby, you look worried?" Her mother's voice was barely a whisper. "Just school stuff. Mom, don't worry about me. I hate that you're dealing with all this alone. Your father should be here." Victoria squeezed her hand gently. "I'm not alone, and I'm going to take care of everything." She signed the contract the next morning, moving into a different world. James Mitchell's mansion in Pacific Heights was like stepping into a magazine. Marble floors, priceless art, rooms bigger than Victoria's entire apartment. A housekeeper named Mrs. Chen showed her to a guest bedroom on the third floor. Mr. Mitchell works late most nights, Mrs. Chen explained. He takes breakfast at 7, dinner at 8 when he's home. He values privacy and quiet. The bedroom was beautiful, but impersonal. Victoria unpacked her few belongings, feeling like an intruder. That evening, she ate alone in the formal dining room, served by staff who treated her with polite distance. James appeared at 8:30, still in his suit, phone pressed to his ear. He nodded at Victoria, but continued his conversation while eating. She finished quickly and excused herself. This routine continued for a week. They were strangers sharing a house, nothing more. The first test came when James knocked on her door one Friday evening. "We're attending my grandfather's birthday party tomorrow. The family will meet you." Victoria's stomach clenched. What do I need to know? Robert Mitchell built this company from nothing. He's 85, traditional, and suspicious of anyone he thinks is after the family money. My parents died in a car accident 10 years ago. I have one sister, Rebecca, who lives in New York with her husband. And your grandfather likes you? Something flickered in James's eyes. He thinks I'm too focused on work, not enough on family. Hence the marriage requirement. The next evening, Victoria stood before her mirror in a navy blue dress James had sent up. Simple but elegant, with pearls that had belonged to his mother. Her hands shook as she fastened them. The Mitchell family estate in Napa Valley was breathtaking. Rolling vineyards stretched to the horizon, and the house itself looked like a European castle. Cars lined the circular driveway, all expensive and gleaming. James helped her out of his Tesla, his hand warm and steady on hers. "Remember, we've been quietly dating for 8 months. We wanted to be sure before going public." Victoria nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. Inside, the party was in full swing. Men in tailored suits and women dripping in jewelry moved through elegant rooms filled with flowers and soft music. Victoria felt every eye turn toward them as James guided her inside. "Jamie." A woman with James's green eyes rushed over. "You must be Victoria." "I'm Rebecca. It's wonderful to meet you," Victoria managed, accepting the warm hug. "Grandfather is holding court in the library," Rebecca whispered. "Fair warning, he's going to interrogate you." Robert Mitchell was a smaller version of his grandson, still sharp-eyed, despite his age. He sat in a leather chair surrounded by family, members and business associates. "So, you're the girl who finally caught my grandson's attention." His voice carried authority even in its frailness. "Victoria Hayes, sir." "It's an honor to meet you, Hayes. Not a name I recognize." "What does your family do?" Victoria felt James tense beside her. "My mother is a nurse in Ohio. My father isn't in the picture. And you're in school. Graduate. Program in social work at Berkeley." Robert's eyebrows raised slightly. "Social work. Not business or law." "I want to help families in crisis, sir." For the first time, the old man smiled. "Admirable. James, you found someone with actual values." As the evening progressed, Victoria found herself relaxing slightly. Rebecca was warm and funny, sharing embarrassing childhood stories about James. Other family members seemed genuinely kind, welcoming her with curiosity rather than suspicion. During dinner, James's uncle made a toast to Robert Mitchell, who built an empire but never forgot that family comes first. And to James and Victoria, "May you build something equally lasting." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes at the unexpected warmth. Beside her, James raised his glass with a smile that looked almost genuine. On the drive home, they sat in comfortable silence until James spoke. "You did well tonight. Your family is lovely. They are. It's one reason I couldn't marry someone I didn't respect, even for business purposes." Victoria looked at his profile in the dashboard lights. "Is that what this is? Respect?" James was quiet for a long moment. "It's more than most marriages start with." Back at the mansion, Victoria climbed the stairs to her room, James's words echoing in her mind. At her door, she turned back. "James." He paused halfway up to his own room. "Yes, thank you. For tonight, for everything. I know this isn't what you wanted." His expression softened slightly. "It isn't what either of us wanted." but maybe we can make it work." As Victoria closed her door, she realized something had shifted between them. The contract was still just paper, but the people behind it were becoming real to each other, and that terrified her more than anything else. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Victoria had settled into an odd rhythm at the Mitchell mansion. She attended her graduate classes during the day, while James disappeared into his corporate world of board meetings and international calls. Evenings found them sharing polite dinners when he was home, discussing safe topics like the weather or current events. But cracks were beginning to show in their carefully constructed distance. It started small. James began asking about her mother's treatment, remembering details from previous conversations. Victoria found herself lingering in the kitchen when he made his morning coffee. Drawn to the quiet moments before his day consumed him, one Thursday morning, Victoria's phone rang as she was reviewing case studies for her social work practicum. Her mother's voice was weak but excited. "Victoria, honey, Dr. Rodriguez says the first round of chemo is working. The tumors are shrinking." Victoria sank into her chair, relief flooding through her. "Mom, that's incredible news. I know we still have a long way to go, but for the first time in months, I have hope." After hanging up, Victoria found herself crying in the mansion's elegant library. Happy tears, but tears nonetheless. She was so lost in emotion that she didn't hear James enter. "Victoria, what's wrong?" She looked up to find him standing in the doorway, his usually composed expression replaced by genuine concern. He was still in his pajamas and robe, hair tousled from sleep. "Nothing's wrong. My mom's treatment is working." She wiped her cheeks, embarrassed by her emotional display. James moved closer, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "That's wonderful news. Why are you crying?" "Relief, I think. Fear too. This is just the first step. And I keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't found this opportunity." For a moment, James looked like he wanted to say something profound. Instead, he simply handed her his handkerchief. "She's going to be fine. The best oncologists in the country are treating her." Victoria looked up sharply. "How do you know that?" James had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I may have made some calls. Ensured she was getting optimal care." "James, you didn't need to do that." "Yes, I did. Your mother's health affects you, and you affect our arrangement." It was practical, but Victoria saw something in his eyes that wasn't practical at all. It was kind, protective, and deeply personal. The media stormed there. Quiet existence shattered the following week when a gossip blogger spotted them at a charity auction Rebecca had insisted they attend. The photo showed James's hand on Victoria's back as he guided her through the crowd, both of them laughing at something she had whispered by morning. Victoria's phone was buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. She ignored them until Mrs. Chen knocked on her door. "Miss Hayes, there are reporters outside the gate." Victoria pulled back the curtain to see news vans lining the street. Her stomach dropped as she scrolled through the headlines on her phone. Tech billionaire's secret wife. Who is Victoria Hayes? From nobody to Mrs. Mitchell, the mysterious woman who caught a billionaire. Gold digger alert. Mitchell's new wife has nothing to offer. The articles were brutal, dissecting her background, her family's financial struggles, even her father's abandonment. They painted her as an opportunist who had somehow tricked James into marriage. James found her in the kitchen an hour later, still in her pajamas, staring at her laptop screen. "Turn it off," he said gently. Closing the computer, they know everything. "James, about my mom, about my dad leaving, about our debt, they're calling me a gold digger. People always create stories to explain what they don't understand. Ignore them." Victoria laughed bitterly. "Easy for you to say. Your reputation isn't being destroyed." James sat beside her, his voice firm. "My reputation is built on business success, not public opinion. Yours shouldn't be either, but it affects you too. The board, your grandfather. Let me worry about them." That afternoon, James made a public statement defending their marriage and Victoria's character, but the damage was spreading. Victoria's classmates stared at her differently. Professors treated her with a mixture of awe and suspicion. She felt like an exhibit in a zoo. The worst part was the way it affected her relationship with James. The easy conversations over dinner became stilted again. He worked even later, avoiding the media frenzy by staying at the office, discovering. The past Victoria's breaking point came 2 weeks later, when she overheard a phone conversation between James and his business partner. The board is concerned about the publicity, David was saying. Some members think your judgment is compromised. My personal life doesn't affect my business decisions. James replied coldly. They're worried about her influence over you. The prenup protects the company assets. But there are other concerns. Victoria crept away, her cheeks burning. She was becoming a liability, exactly what she'd feared. That evening, she confronted James in his study. I heard your call with David. James looked up from his computer, his expression guarded. Victoria, the board thinks I'm a bad influence. Maybe they're right. The board doesn't understand our arrangement. I'm handling it. How? By working 18-hour days to avoid being seen with me? James closed his laptop, his jaw tight. I'm protecting us both. No, you're protecting yourself. I'm just collateral damage. Something flashed in James's eyes, but he didn't argue. That night, Victoria barely slept, replaying the conversation and wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. The next morning, she found James in the kitchen earlier than usual, making coffee for two. He handed her a cup without speaking. James, I think we need to talk about ending this early. He froze, his cup halfway to his lips. What? The media attention, the board's concerns. I'm causing problems you didn't anticipate. The problems aren't your fault, but they're still problems. And I'm the source. James set down his coffee and turned to face her fully. Victoria, there's something you need to know about why I really needed this marriage. She waited, sensing something important was coming. 5 years ago, I was engaged to someone the board approved of. Catherine Wright, from a prominent banking family. Perfect pedigree, perfect connections. Victoria's chest tightened, but she stayed silent. 2 weeks before the wedding, I found out she'd been having an affair with my business rival. She was passing him inside information about our deals, sabotaging bids, feeding him our strategies. James, I'm sorry. I ended the engagement, but the damage was done. We lost 3 major contracts because of her betrayal. The board blamed me for not seeing through her, for letting emotion cloud my judgment. Victoria began to understand. That's why you wanted distance in this arrangement. I swore I'd never let anyone get close enough to hurt me or the company again. This marriage was supposed to be purely transactional, was supposed to be... James looked directly at her, his green eyes intense. You make me want to forget those rules, Victoria, and that terrifies me. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. The grandfather's test that weekend. Robert Mitchell requested a private dinner with just James and Victoria. They drove to his Napa estate in tense silence, both wondering what the old man had discovered. Robert received them in his private dining room, more intimate space than the grand rooms they'd seen before. Despite his age, his eyes were sharp as he studied Victoria throughout the meal. Tell me about your father, he said suddenly. Startling Victoria, grandfather, James began. But Robert held up a hand. I want to hear from her. Victoria set down her fork, her appetite gone. He left when I was 16. My mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and couldn't handle the responsibility. That must have been difficult. It was. But it taught me that families stick together through hardship. Real families don't abandon each other when things get tough. Robert nodded slowly. And your mother raised you alone? She did? She worked double shifts as a nurse to support us, never complained. Never made me feel like a burden, yet you ended up in considerable debt. Victoria felt James tense beside her. But she answered honestly. Medical bills are overwhelming, even with insurance. When she got cancer, I would have done anything to save her, including marrying my grandson for money. The words hit like a slap. But Victoria met his gaze steadily. Yes, sir. Including that. Robert leaned back, studying her. Most people would have lied, Tried to convince me it was love at first sight. Lying to you would be disrespectful. You deserve the truth. And what is the truth, Victoria? She glanced at James, whose expression was unreadable. The truth is that this started as a business arrangement. But your grandson is a good man, and I've come to care for him deeply. Care for him or care for his money? Victoria's temper flared. If I only cared about money, I would have married the richest man who asked. It's not the most complicated one. For the first time that evening, Robert smiled. James, step outside. I want to speak with Victoria alone. James looked reluctant, but obeyed his grandfather's request. My grandson has been hurt before, Robert said once they were alone. Badly. It made him cold, suspicious. I know about Catherine, do you? Do you know he blamed himself for trusting her? That he swore he'd never let business and emotion mix again? Victoria nodded. Yet here you are, in his house, at his table, in his thoughts. He looks at you the way he looked at her, but different. Scared. I don't want to hurt him. But you will, won't you? When your year is up, when your mother is healthy, you'll take your money and disappear. Victoria's throat tightened. That was the agreement. Agreements can be changed. The question is whether you want to change this one. When James returned, Victoria was quiet during the drive home. His grandfather's words echoed in her mind, along with the realization that somewhere in the past month, her feelings had shifted from gratitude to something much more dangerous. The turning point that night. Victoria couldn't sleep. She found herself walking through the mansion's halls, ending up in James's study, where he was still working despite the late hour. Can't sleep either? He asked, without looking up from his computer. Your grandfather asked me some hard questions. Tonight, he has that talent. Victoria moved to the window overlooking the city lights. James, what happens when this year is over? He finally looked at her, his expression careful. We dissolve the marriage as planned. You get your money, I get my inheritance, we both move on. Is that what you want? The question hung in the air for a long moment. James saved his work and closed the laptop, giving her his full attention. What I want stopped being relevant the moment I signed that contract. That's not an answer. James stood and moved to join her at the window. What do you want me to say, Victoria? That I've grown fond of our arrangement? That I'll miss having you here? I want you to tell me the truth. He turned to look at her, and Victoria saw something raw and vulnerable in his expression. The truth is that you've complicated everything. This was supposed to be simple, safe. But you make me want things I can't afford to want. Like what? Like a real marriage. Like someone who chooses me, not my money or my status, but me. Victoria's heart hammered against her ribs. James, but I've been down this road before, Victoria. I know how it ends. I'm not Catherine. Aren't you? You married me for money. When your mother is healthy and your debt is paid, what reason will you have to stay? The words stung because they held truth. Victoria had married him for money. But somewhere along the way, that had changed. And she wasn't sure when or how. Maybe, she said quietly, you should give me a chance to show you. James studied her face in the dim light. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe we both got more than we bargained for. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Before James could respond, Victoria's phone rang. The hospital. Her mother. I have to take this, she said, her hand trembling as she answered. Miss Hayes? This is Dr. Rodriguez. I'm sorry to call so late, but your mother has taken a turn. You need to come to the hospital immediately. The phone slipped from Victoria's numb fingers. James caught it, spoke briefly with the doctor, then took her hand. Come on. We'll take the jet. We can be there in 3 hours. As they rushed through the night toward the airport, Victoria realized that the conversation about their future would have to wait. Right now. All that mattered was getting to her mother in time. But James's hand holding hers as they boarded his private jet felt like a promise that whatever happened, she wouldn't face it alone. The flight to Ohio felt endless. Victoria sat rigid in the leather seat of James's private jet, staring out at the darkness below while her mind spiraled through worst-case scenarios. James worked quietly on his laptop across from her, but she caught him glancing up every few minutes, his concern evident despite his attempts to give her space. When they landed in Columbus, a car was already waiting. James had somehow arranged everything while she sat frozen in panic. During the drive to the hospital, he finally spoke. "Victoria, whatever happens, you're not alone in this." She turned to look at him. This man who had started as a stranger with a business proposition and somehow become her anchor in the storm. "Why are you here, James?" "This isn't part of our contract," his jaw tightened. "Because contracts don't cover everything that matters." At the hospital, they found Linda Hayes in the intensive care unit, looking fragile and small among the machines keeping her stable. Victoria rushed to her bedside while James spoke quietly with Dr. Rodriguez in the hallway. "Mom, I'm here," Victoria whispered, taking her mother's cold hand. Linda's eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on her daughter's face. "Victoria, baby. I was hoping you'd come." "Of course I came. How are you feeling?" "Tired. But I need to tell you something." Linda's voice was barely audible. "I met your husband." Victoria glanced toward the hallway where James was still talking with the doctor. "He insisted on flying here with me. He loves you, Mom." "It's complicated." Linda squeezed her hand with surprising strength. "Love always is, sweetheart. But some complications are worth it." Dr. Rodriguez approached the bed with a gentle smile. "Mrs. Hayes, how are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck, but alive." "That's a good sign. We caught the complication early. Your body had an unexpected reaction to the new medication, but we've adjusted the treatment plan. You should be stable within a few days." Relief flooded through Victoria so intensely she felt dizzy. James appeared at her side, his hand steady on her shoulder. Over the next 3 days, Victoria rarely left her mother's side. James stayed too, working from the hospital waiting room, bringing her coffee and making sure she ate. He never complained about the uncomfortable chairs or the disruption to his schedule. On the third evening, as Linda slept peacefully, Victoria found James in the hospital cafeteria, staring at a cup of coffee. "You should go back to San Francisco," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "You've already missed too many meetings. The meetings can wait." "James, I know this isn't what you signed up for." He looked at her directly, his green eyes intense. "Neither was falling in love with my wife." Victoria's breath caught. "What did you say?" "You heard me. I've spent weeks trying to convince myself this was still just business. But watching you these past few days, seeing how you care for your mother, how you put everyone else first." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "I can't pretend anymore, Victoria. This stopped being fake for me weeks ago, James. I know our agreement has an end date. I know you married me for money, and I have no right to ask for more, but I'm asking anyway. When your mother is better, when this year is over, stay. Not for the contract, not for money. Stay because you want to." Victoria felt tears threatening. "What if I hurt you like Catherine did? Then I'll survive it. But what if you don't? What if we could build something real together?" Before Victoria could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Turn on Channel 7 now." They found a television in the waiting room where a news anchor was speaking over footage of James's company. Headquarters Mitchell Technology stock dropped 15% today following rumors of a hostile takeover attempt by Richmond Industries. Sources say the board of directors is concerned about CEO James Mitchell's recent marriage and its impact on his leadership. Victoria felt sick. "This is because of me." "No. This is because David Richmond has been trying to destroy my company for years. Catherine was working for him, remember?" The news report continued with an interview featuring a board member Victoria recognized from family events. "While we support James personally, some investors question whether his judgment has been compromised by his sudden marriage to an unknown woman with significant financial needs." James turned off the television, his expression grim. "I need to get back to San Francisco." "Go. I'll stay with Mom." "Victoria, come with me. Your mother is stable and I need you there." "For what?" "I'll just make things worse." James gripped her shoulders gently. "You'll make things better. Because when I walk into that boardroom, I want them to see that my wife stands beside me, not behind me. The battle for everything they flew back to San Francisco the next morning after ensuring Linda was truly recovering. The flight was tense, with James fielding constant calls from his lawyers and board members. Victoria watched the city appear below them and realized she was about to walk into a war she had helped create. The Mitchell Technologies building buzzed with activity when they arrived. Reporters crowded the lobby while security guards tried to maintain order. James took Victoria's hand as they walked through the chaos, cameras flashing around them. In the elevator, he squeezed her fingers. "Whatever happens in there, remember that I chose you. Not the board, not my grandfather, not the contract. Me." The executive conference room was packed with board members, lawyers, and senior staff. Victoria recognized some faces from family events, but their expressions were cold, calculating. At the head of the table sat David Richmond, silver-haired man with cruel eyes who smiled when he saw them enter. "James, Victoria, how nice of you to join us." James didn't release Victoria's hand as they took their seats. "Richmond, I wasn't aware you'd been invited to this meeting. The board asked me to present an alternative leadership proposal," David said smoothly. "Given recent concerns about your priorities, for the next hour," Victoria listened to David systematically attack James's recent decisions. His marriage and his fitness to lead the company his grandfather had built. Several board members nodded along, their loyalty clearly wavering. "The question," David concluded, "is whether James Mitchell can put the company's interests above his personal entanglements." James stood slowly, his presence commanding the room. "The question is whether this board will let a bitter rival manipulate them into destroying everything we've built, your marriage to this woman has created instability," board member Patricia Wells interjected. The media attention, the questions about her motives. Victoria felt every eye in the room turn to her. James started to respond, but she stood first. "May I speak?" The room fell silent. Victoria had never addressed the board before, but she met each gaze steadily. "You're right to question my motives. I married James because I needed money for my mother's medical treatment. That's not romantic, but it's honest." Murmurs rippled around the table. "But since then, I've watched James work 8-hour days to protect this company and every person who depends on it for their livelihood. I've seen him make impossible decisions with wisdom and compassion. I've watched him honor his grandfather's legacy while building something even greater." She turned to look at David Richmond directly. "Mr. Richmond, you want this company because you couldn't build something better yourself. James doesn't want it. He earned it. And if you think his marriage makes him weak, you've never seen him fight for something he believes in." Victoria sat down to stunned silence. James's hand found hers under the table, his grip warm and proud. The vote was closer than it should have been, but James retained control of the company. David Richmond stormed out, promising this wasn't over. As the board members filed out, several approached Victoria with grudging respect. The real choice that evening? They sat in James's study, both emotionally drained from the day's battles. Victoria stared at the city lights while James poured 2 glasses of wine. "Thank you," he said, handing her a glass. "For what you said today, I meant every word. I know you did. That's what made it so powerful." Victoria set down her wine and turned to face him. "James, I need to tell you something. The money from our contract, I've been thinking about what to do with the rest of it." His expression grew guarded. "Oh, I want to start a foundation for families dealing with medical crises, to help them navigate the financial burden. I want to use my experience to help others." James studied her face. "That's a beautiful idea, but it would mean giving up most of your payment. The money was never really mine anyway. It was just a means to save my mother. Now that she's going to be okay, I want to do something meaningful with it. And what about us? About our marriage?" Victoria's heart hammered as she met his gaze. "That depends. Are you offering me a choice?" James set down his wine and moved closer. "I'm offering you everything, Victoria. Not just my money or my name, but my heart, my future, my partnership in building something bigger than either of us could manage alone, even though I married you for money." Because you married me for love. Your love for your mother. Your willingness to sacrifice for family. Those are the qualities I want in a partner. Victoria felt tears threatening again. James, I love you. Not your money, not your status. You. The man who flew across the country because I needed him. The man who stood up to his entire board for me. The man who makes me want to be better than I am. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. Then marry me again. Not for contracts or convenience, but for love. We're already married. James smiled. The first truly relaxed expression she'd seen from him in weeks. Then let's make it real this time. New beginnings. 6 months later, Victoria stood in the garden of the Mitchell estate in Napa Valley. Wearing a simple white dress and holding her mother's hand, Linda Hayes looked radiant, her hair grown back in soft waves, her color healthy and bright. Are you nervous, sweetheart? Victoria smiled, watching James greeting guests near the altar they'd set up among the vineyard rows. No, Mom. For the first time in years, I'm exactly where I belong. The ceremony was small, attended only by family and close friends. Rebecca served as matron of honor, while Thomas Chen stood as James's best man. Robert Mitchell, now 90 and using a walker, beamed with pride as he prepared to officiate. When Victoria walked down the aisle, she saw James's face light up with pure joy. This time, when they exchanged vows, every word came from their hearts. Victoria, James said, his voice steady and sure, you came into my life as part of a business deal. But you became my partner, my best friend, and my greatest love. I promise to stand beside you, to support your dreams, and to never let fear keep us apart again. Victoria's voice trembled with emotion as she replied, James, you showed me that love doesn't have to be complicated or scary. It just has to be honest. I promise to choose you every day, not because I have to, but because I want to, because you're my home. When they kissed, the vineyard erupted in cheers. Later, as they danced under string lights with their family and friends around them, Victoria marveled at how much had changed. The Victoria Hayes Foundation had launched 3 months earlier. Already helping dozens of families navigate medical crises, James had restructured Mitchell Technologies to include more charitable initiatives. Using business success to create positive change, David Richmond had tried one more hostile takeover attempt. But the board's confidence in James had only grown stronger. The man who had once kept everyone at arm's length now led with both his head and his heart. What are you thinking about? James murmured as they swayed to the music. Just how different everything is from a year ago. Better different? Victoria smiled up at her husband, her partner, her best friend. Much better. Though I have to admit, when I answered that strange marriage advertisement, this isn't what I expected. James laughed, spinning her around in his arms. Life rarely turns out the way we plan. Sometimes it turns out better. As the stars appeared overhead and their loved ones celebrated around them, Victoria realized that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the most practical arrangements. What mattered wasn't how it started, how two people chose to write the ending together. Their contract had been for 1 year. But their love story was just beginning. The end.